And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at this giant game here called the City of Kings. Now the City of Kings is a massive big game, and in fact, I think the box cover for this game is amazingly good. It's a really fantastic looking game. It is an adventure style game. It was a big Kickstarter game, and so it fits up my alley. Someone had compared this to Gloomhaven, which is my current favorite game, and I was pretty excited to jump into this one. Let's take a closer look. Each player in the game is going to get a character, and I'm going to start out here by saying there is no way I can cover every possible thing in this game. There's a lot going on in this game, so don't be using this as a rules overview. Just use this as kind of a way to get a feel of what the game is. Now these characters, looks like there is a lot of information on here, and there is, but it's not as complex as it looks. So here I have this plastic overlay. I think this is a Kickstarter thing. You don't need it, but it helps keep everything where it's supposed to be. And you're going to have a bunch of stats that each character is going to have. Like you have your hit points, so here I have 5 hit points, and then this here, my health marker, this actually is where I keep track of my actual hit points. This is my maximum hit points. You have your attack value, you have a heal value, you have a range, how far your attack works, you have a movement value, you have luck, which are extra dice that you can roll when doing different things. You have your workers have stats, so you have 2 workers that will be out on the board, and each of them is going to have a certain amount they can move, how far they can gather, how many dice they roll when they gather. When they're at certain spots on the board, they're going to get to roll gathering dice, and how many dice they roll when they're on scavenging spots on the board. Each player is going to start with 1 worker, and then a second worker you'll be able to get out on the board at a certain point in time. When one of these stats reaches a number 4, you'll get to put your second worker out. Players are going to be using these tokens here. You have 4 of them. You'll get a 5th one when you get a second worker, and you're going to be using these each turn to take actions. So like I can move my worker 1 twice if I wanted to. I can move my main character. This is Earthshaker here, and each character comes with a standee that you'll be moving around the board. I can explore, which means flipping over tiles, attack or heal. If there's a special thing, there might be a tile that interacts, and my workers, I can move around and explore and do things with them. As the game goes by, you're going to be looking for equipment. You'll be able to add legs and body equipment, so maybe I find some tasteless boots. All right, and I can put those here on my legs, and they're going to immediately improve those stats as long as I have this. So you can see that these stats here, the tasteless boots provide me with an extra movement. My workers are going to scavenge a little better and gather a little better. So I can get those. I can also get body. Maybe I get the Battle Plate of the Adventurer, which gives me 2 extra movement and 2 more range. When you reach a certain point with one of your stats here on your main character board, you will also be able to add helmets when you find them. So maybe I'll find Noggle's Bright Idea, and then when you get even farther down the thing, you'll be able to get equipment for your arms. So maybe I'll find Wizard's Bane here. You can see as you fill with these different ideas, these weapons here, you're going to get a whole lot more special abilities. Your stats are going to improve quite a bit. Also, each player is going to start here on this skill report. You're going to pick one of these, which is also going to increase your stats. And as the game goes by and you go up in experience, you're going to be able to add more of these, which is going to do a couple things. It's going to add to your stats, but eventually you can move over here and pick from the special abilities. These special abilities are what diversifies the different characters. This is really the only thing that's different. And as time goes by, you're going to be able to get cards and place those into Tier 2 and Tier 3, which give you more stats and more special abilities as you kind of follow paths and move up and get better stats and or special abilities that will let you do different things over the course of the game. So this is your character sheet. Then there's the actual game board itself. Now this board here is set up. Sometimes there's going to be specific things placed in different spots, and I know what's placed in the different spots. For example, here I'm supposed to have actually an oak wood here in this spot. So it shows me where 2 tiles go specifically. This is story 1. You'll see there's different chapters in the same story. The first one tells you your setup. It tells you how much hope you have, what time of day it is, how much morale you have, and then where your stats are going to be, like do you get any extra stats, and then basically how to set up the board, what tiles you'll use. There are plenty of tiles that are not used in the different scenarios. You want to have the correct ones, and where your heroes and your workers start. And so you'll be, as I showed you earlier, you have these different heroes and you also have workers, and you're going to be placing these folks on the city here, in at least this scenario, and you'll be moving them around. Remember, you'll be using your workers and and the different tokens you have to move, to explore, to reveal these. Sometimes they will reveal a resource in the game. This happens to be a wood resource. If you get a worker there, you'll be able to roll these dice equal to how much your workers can gather. The number of pickaxes you roll is the number of resources you'll get of that type. Now, when you collect resources, I think these are the upgraded Kickstarter resources, because I also got a whole bunch of, you can see, little token resources. There's 4 main types of resources, and your workers are going to be able to carry those on your sheet. You have a spot for each of the workers to carry those. When your workers come back to town, you'll be able to drop them off in the old barn, where you're just able to keep track of how many you have. Like I have 5, there's 5 wheat, and everyone's going to have access to be able to use that. You're going to be gathering these resources, but every time you roll this symbol, you're also going to be dropping off tokens in a region, and if you get too many of these tokens in one region, an enemy monster is going to appear. So you're going to find various places to collect things. Sometimes you're going to find a place where a creature will show up too, a monster that you have to fight. And then once that creature leaves or things, you can just go here and scavenge. Scavenge is a little safer, I guess, but it's also more random. You will get a specific type of resource, but there's also the chance that you will attract a monster there as well. Let's take a look at monsters. So when you come across a creature, the way that you do a creature is you'll pull off the stack here of these creature tokens, these tiles that you have. Now, these have some specific, they tell you the story here of the Grimmer. These guys are bristly scars and bred and mutated by Vesh, who's the big evil bad guy. And you'll put this down. Now, these are all essentially the same. It doesn't really matter which one of these you pull out. What matters more is this stat bar. You're going to pull these in order. Well, from the first scenario, you pull 1. You might start at a higher number in later scenarios. And this is the stat bar that's added to this creature. So you can see this creature has 5 health. Every turn it's going to heal 1. It's going to attack for 1, and then it will hit everyone for 1, and all that within a range of 2. If you kill it, everyone's going to get 1 experience point. But also, you'll see that it draws 1 easy trait. There are bags for easy, medium, and hard traits. This one has 1 easy trait, so we'll pull from this bag, and we've pulled a poison bolt. There's a little number on here, 33. That's just to show if you have multiple traits, what order they go off in. And you'll have to look up in a book and see what this creature will do. You also have these tokens here. I'll just take this here. It matches the Grimner. It's the same thing. Put it in a stand and put it on the board. And these creatures are going to be attacking every time when you discover one. Every time it comes around to the creature's turn, they're going to do whatever their stat bar tells them to do. So in this case, this one is going to heal, it's going to attack and do things. It has 5 hit points, so you're going to be able to go and attack it yourself. Usually when you attack a creature, you're just going to add your attack. Possibly you might have some luck. So when you roll luck dice, they can add to your attack, or they'll add 50% of your base attack, or they add nothing here, like these X's show. You'll subtract any armor if the creature has any armor. This one doesn't. Let's see if I can find one that does have armor. You can see that as we go up. Here's the number 4. You can see this monster is already harder. Has 8 hit points, draws 3 traits, has 1 armor, which is subtracted from each of your attacks. Does 2, 2, and 3. So these are going to go through all the way to you see number 30 here. Has 3 hard traits, a medium trait, easy trait, 45 hit points. Whenever you hit it, it does 6 attack automatically back to you. Has 8 armor, heals 12 every turn, does 21 attack to anyone who's within 9 range. Yeah, that's crazy powerful. And so these are, like I said, they're always going to come out in the same order. So it's not quite a random monster, just the traits that are put on it are what's random. And then you are going to try to defeat these so you can get experience. Why do you want experience? Well, right here is an experience tracker. Now, unlike many role-playing games, in this game everyone has a shared experience point track. And so you'll start with 0, and as you kill monsters and do things, you're going to go up in levels. And as you go up in levels, let's focus closer on the board here, you can see that you'll be able to move any of the cubes of any of your stats up as you pass different levels. And you'll also be able to add those discs to go up and get more special abilities, as I showed you earlier. One of the ways to get these cubes to go up in levels and things like that is by killing monsters. But also you're going to find quests. There's a huge deck of quests cards, and when you find a quest, it will tell you to do something. Sometimes you have to pick a specific, you have different options here. If I stack 11 wood vertically using only one hand, I'll fail, but if I win, I get 3 wood and 2 experience. Here I can stack 14 vertically using only one hand. If it falls, you fail. Well, that's one I haven't seen yet. That was a stacking skill. But there's all different ones. Sometimes there's a bucket. Do you want to take the bucket? You get 3 fish. Or do you want to leave the bucket? You get 1. And sometimes you need to go do something here. So let's take a look farther down here. Set up a creature and defeat it. I get an extra experience point. Or set up a creature and defeat it, but they have an extra medium ability. And if I defeat the creature then, I get 3. Experience. Sometimes they'll require you to take resources back and do different things. Resources themselves are going to be used for various things over the course of this game. Many times they'll be used to buy the equipment. Certain things will cause equipment cards to show up back at the home base, and you can go back there and buy this equipment. As you've seen already, equipment can be pretty handy. Like, for example, this one here requires 4 cloth, a fish, and a wood. And if I get this, though, that's a whole lot of extra special abilities that I'll be able to add to my stack. You also can buy one-shot items for 8 stone, 8 wood, 8 fish, or 3 attack. You can get more cards. You can build traps and different things to fight the enemy creatures. What are you doing overall is based on what kind of mission you're playing. You can be playing a scenario where it will give you a very specific thing that you need to do in that scenario, and it will show you how to set up the scenario and what to do. Or you can play a story, and when you go through a story, you're going to go through several cards. And the story is going to be usually tracked by time. Each time every player has a turn, we move this all, and you'll notice when it gets back here to midnight, you lose a hope. See, there's 2 ways to lose this game. If your hope goes down to 0, you lose. In this particular scenario, you start with 2 hope, but there's things that can raise your hope. There's also morale. If morale gets down to 0, you lose. Morale usually goes down when someone dies. When you die, you're not out of the game. You can kind of reboot and rejigger and things like that, but then you also lose a morale, which could cause everybody to lose. So that's pretty much the game in a nutshell. As I said, you're going to go out and explore. Sometimes exploring is what you need to do, and you're going to do this until you get to whatever the final thing is. It might be beating a very big bad guy. In fact, there are, even though most of these enemies are random, there are also some major bad guys that you can fight that are specific bosses. Like the queen here. The difference between them and everyone else is it will show you a special ability that they have no matter what. So she always has swipe, this guy always has blizzard, etc. And that might be what you need to do, or the scenario might be collect a whole bunch of wood. Your workers themselves, if they get caught up in a creature, they're not going to be able to do anything, so you're going to have to go rescue them by going and fighting these creatures. There's these special movement cards. Sometimes things get moved randomly on the board. So the way this works is you start, and if you can move to that spot, so if it was here, I'm not going to be able to move over 2 to the left and up 2, so then I try 2. Can I go up 1 from here? Yes. So these cards are actually a pretty clever way of moving things randomly on the board. Like I said, there's a lot more going on in the game than that, but that's basically a general gist of it. There are a lot of pieces in this game for sure. The artwork itself is very well done. I like how these look. My only complaint here is that they did not make it. I would have made it so that everything fit together like a map. And and like here, Vesen's Curse and Cripplewood Canyon are using the exact same artwork, which I felt was kind of, considering how there's not a ton of artwork needed for the game, I would have figured they would have done that. I mean, they did do different artwork for all the different items. This stuff is great, and the card quality is really good, and the symbols are pretty useful. Like I said, I know I have a lot of Kickstarter stuff in this game, but I don't think, for example, that these resources were bad. And they have different tokens for fire and for poison and for frost, and some of the creatures have special stand-ups. And here's the stat bars. This is for a 4-player game. You use different stat bars for each, and everything fits nicely in these trays. The character sheets are good, although there is a lot going on in these character sheets. These plastic overlays are great, except for one thing: they don't snap on. So if you put it on top here, I paper clip them together, because otherwise you move it a little bit and all your cubes move around on the board. You could play without it, obviously, and that's, I think, the way the regular game comes. But then again, it's easy to bump everything. So, you know, it's good for the most part. The dice are good quality. The monsters, I would prefer not symbols here. I mean, I like the way that the bosses look. They're great, but the rest of them kind of just have some, you know, the Hand of Esh, the Coven of Hate, the Hope Breakers, and things like that. They look okay, but it is pretty easy to figure out what everything is. So overall, the game production here is pretty stunning. There's a ton of pieces involved, and even though you're going to have to be, you know, whenever you pull these tokens, you're going to have to look them up. Move. I mean, once you figure out what they do, but there is a lot of different special abilities: knockback, panic, temptation, curse. So you'll be constantly looking those up in the rulebook. But the rulebook was pretty clear. I didn't have any problems with figuring out exactly what to do each time. And then there's an extra book besides the rulebook that tells you what all the special abilities do. So that's kind of an easy thing to pass around to all the players. I want you guys to realize that I went into City of Kings predisposed to liking the game. Unfortunately, I've come out the other end where saying this game is definitely not one for me, which is unfortunate for me, but I'm not saying that it is a bad game. I want to be clear as to the reasons that I'm not a fan of it. And there's one pretty strong reason that I'm not a fan of it, and that is because the mix of randomness with puzzles with a lack of theme doesn't really click together for me. I want to start with the lack of theme first. I think that there's some strong theming in the game to some degree. Like, if you pick one of these characters here, like Columbus Earthshaker, who I think is the main character, you can read their story in the back, and I did, and I read lots of things. There's even this book here, you know, talking about designing the world, and there's a lot of like little theming in the game, and that's interesting and all. But the monsters themselves are very problematic for me. They are random monsters, and so you'll fight like the scorpion tail monster, right? So they'll come, and they have ice breath and seduction or whatever. Well, they have some random skills, and it doesn't make any sense, especially with the stat bar. That doesn't kind of mesh together. I can't figure out, why does this monster do this? Like, I play a lot of games with dungeon crawls and adventure crawls, and so a scorpion will come. He probably has poison because he's a scorpion, and you know, he might have stronger armor. Why? Because he's a scorpion. This guy here has fire-breathing breath because he's a dragon-type creature. And that sort of thing makes sense in the course of the game. Even if you invent some weird new monsters, they're going to make sense because they're going to follow patterns. Here, the monsters both follow a pattern, because you're going to be drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 through that stack of stat tiles, and randomness. And that combination makes a creature that I cannot see in my imagination. Instead, this creature just simply becomes a bunch of mathematics sitting there. Now, I understand that in many games this happens. My favorite game, Gloomhaven, it's a bunch of mathematics. Defeat the monsters. Even games that have a lot of strong theme like Descent, it's a bunch of mathematics, even if you're rolling dice or whatever. But because they strip me of that theme, because the monster is essentially a themeless monster, all I can see is the math when I go to that monster. And that makes this game not an adventure, but a puzzle. Now, this puzzle kind of adventure can be a very successful thing, and I think there's some people who are going to enjoy that. There's some similarities here to the Legends of Andor, which is also a puzzle-solving adventure game. The problem with City of Kings for me is that the puzzle, maybe I could do that. Again, Gloomhaven has a similar puzzle aspect, but it has a much stronger theme. But not just the puzzle aspect, then there's a chunk of randomness in the game. I might be looking for a certain location and I turn over every tile and it's the last one, or it might be the first one. The monster might come up and tie up my worker and there's no way to get to him. And the monster fighting itself, not just the randomness of the monsters, but it's kind of abstracted out. This monster could hit anyone on the board. Great. Well, what does that even mean? I might say I'm not going to defeat this monster here because if I do that, will bring out this bigger monster and I'm not ready for him yet. So I'm going to let this monster cause havoc, but I need to beat this. And it becomes this puzzle. And you also memorize the stat bars if you go through multiple times and you say, okay, I'm going to defeat this monster in this order and we need to get this. And again, I can kind of feel out that whole puzzly aspect. But then it's tied to random equipment. Equipment's a huge part of this game because it boosts up your stats. If you get the right equipment at the right time, you can boost up 6 different stats. If the right kind of equipment shows up. Like you can't even use a sword or anything, which, by the way, thematically makes no sense. But until you get your stats to a certain level. But if your first equipment cards you turn over are swords, or you pull over quest cards that aren't easy to beat, you're probably going to lose. It's just bad luck. But if you get good luck, then maybe you can go on and go farther. And that luck seems a little heavy for the amount of puzzly nature that the game has. I would rather it have this luck, and then luck kind of swings both ways. And the monsters, I don't know what monsters we're going to find, but we're going to go defeat them. But no, I know this monster is going to come up with some random abilities. And what am I going to have? I don't know. Another problem I have disconnecting with the theme is the characters themselves. They are really neat. You know, we have this big blue monster guy, and we have this guy here who looks like a dwarf from Warhammer 40K, and they are the exact same, except the special skills that they have. But you don't get those skills till you get up some points, and those skills are differentiated, but you only get 3 skills at most from these. And they may, like this guy here, I would assume he would have a completely different health track than this guy does, but they don't. And because of that, because they feel so similar, again, that kind of pulls me away from the theme and again makes me look at the game as just a vast array of numbers. There are things I like. Don't get me wrong. I like the idea of everyone leveling up at the same time. That's a good. I think the idea of having workers and heroes on the board at the same time is pretty cool. Yeah, your people, they're not heroes, but they're going around. I like the rolling the dice for resources, but possibly attracting a monster. That's pretty cool. I like the idea of quests and choices, and I like the fact that you're probably not going to run across the same quest twice. I like the scenarios. I like the chapters. I like the production value of this game. Very high. But when it comes down to it, all those cool things really fizzle for me because I can't get into the game. There are a lot of games out there that are strong Euro games and things that have no theme, but I can still play them because the game is phenomenal. I don't feel like this game is phenomenal enough by itself without the theme. And when I play an adventure game, and I'm okay with playing an adventure game that doesn't use your generic orcs and goblins and dwarves, I'm fine with that. But it still needs to make some thematic sense to me. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit. This may really attract you. I mean, it is a great production. It looks fantastic on the table. But it's not the kind of adventure game that I want it to play. It's the kind of adventure game that is a strong, themeless puzzle mixed with a heavy dose of randomness, and those two mixed together is just not for me. It's not a very long game. It doesn't outstay its welcome. I think it works well for what it is, and I think there's going to be a lot of people who enjoy it. I'm just not one of them. Dice Tower Judgment, beautiful, but no soul.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.